Welcome to Simply Awesome People. Our guest today is Lizi Woods. I met Lizi a few months back, and I'll tell you, I haven't seen anybody so excited to talk about people analytics. The way she simplified what people analytics is and her passion about people analytics really got me excited. And first thing I did was, sent her a LinkedIn request and pestered her to have a conversation with us on the podcast. And she was so kind and generous. She had been juggling through so many assignments, but today we have Lizi here. Lizi, thank you so much for joining in on this podcast, and welcome to Simply Awesome People.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Lizzie, I know most people in the industry know so much about so many other functions in HR. Recruiting probably happens to be the most well-known function in the field of human resources. Then followed by, HR business partnering, compensation benefits, so on and so forth. People analytics, I feel, is a slightly underappreciated function in the industry, especially from an HR perspective. What's your take on that?
I I agree in a sense. Not that it's underappreciated, but I don't think it's as well known as it could be, and the benefits of it just aren't as well known as it could be. I know that there's several companies that are now just starting to lean truly into their data and analytics, and more into predictive analytics versus, point in time, where are we at? It's the what do we do now? That's kind of coming to the forefront, and that's where the appreciation is not quite there yet, but it's on its way.
Makes sense. I think the right phrasing would be it's under recognized, but definitely not
That's good.
underappreciated.
There you
Makes
go.
sense. So for people that do not know what a people analytics function does in an organization, would you be able to explain it in a nutshell?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think it could be dependent on the organization, but the way that I like to look at people analytics is it's a way to tie in all of HR across the business and give insights to the human capital that you have at your company. That could be, retention trends, compensation trends. Are we competitive? It's really giving your business more insight with facts, with hard and true information and data, and not just that qualitative, touchy-feely data or information that we typically see for businesses. Like, oh, well, I feel like we're competitive in the market. It's good to give those numbers.
Makes sense. In the context of that, would you like to explain your role in the organizations that you work at in the last few years?
Um, Most of my roles, especially when I really got my foot in the door in people analytics, was translating those really messy, ugly spreadsheets into gorgeous dashboards, something that's quick and easy to use, and also drawing logic out of those numbers that we most likely couldn't do very quickly out of the systems that we had, and also tying the data together. So you have a lot of disparate information across different systems, like your benefits, your compensation, your core HR, your talent acquisition, tying that information together to get insights out. So that's really what my goal is getting quick and easy information to managers, tying information across departments, and also building executive stories with the data.
Thank you, Lizzie. Um, oftentimes we as HR leaders have to navigate a lot of complicated and complex decision making with our leadership. And when we are working with the business leaders, quite often, many successful business leaders are as passionate about the teams they work with or the problems they're wanting to solve. And sometimes passion could potentially come in the way of making the right decisions. At the same time, us HR folks are equally passionate about the problems we want to solve for our people. And while HR is trying to explain or problem solve something, and when passion comes in the middle of making the right decisions, I think oftentimes data plays a really critical role to be that mediator, to bring that objective perspective. What are your thoughts on that? Any experience, best practices that you feel that you could share?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting topic and something almost unique to people analytics. So typically, when you see someone in an analytical or technical, data-driven type role, they may lose that touchy-feely, emotionally driven, people-focused. I'll say that people-focused aspect of their work. And in people analytics, you still have to have that personality that works well in HR. You still have to be people focused while being focused. And sometimes that's a tough line to toe. So when we consider really passionate business leaders who really truly care about their team and have certain perspectives, that data could challenge that perspectives. And now you're in a situation where you're really working through your relationship equity with that business leader, right? So you can't just say, well, like, here's the facts. This is how we're going to move forward. Here's the facts. This is what I recommend, regardless of how you feel about your team or the situation we're in. You still have to approach it people focused, understand how that business leader is going to feel with this information you're going to give them, understand how to deliver that information in an appropriate and individualized way to that leader so they can absorb it in the way that you would like that conversation to go, um, and go from there and really work together and show them like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is, what I would suggest. How do you feel? And you're still working through that relationship, which I do find has been very unique in my role as a people analyst, or working with these types of business leaders and the data. If you come in without that HR type personality or perspective, I find that it could be a more tense or undesirable outcome in your conversations.
Oftentimes I have the opportunity to interact with leaders at startups, founders that are founder CEOs, founder COOs of startups. And many of these startups, right, do not have the budget to put together a people analytics team or even create a subsection of people analytics into the HR function. Oftentimes, I realize that they don't have tools like Power BI, as an example, that many other larger organizations would think it's such a basic thing to have, but many startups do not, and rightfully so, cannot afford to have such tools in the limited budget or in the journey of the organizations that they have. For startups where they may not have the access to such tools, what would be your advice for them to begin building the people analytics perspective and expertise in their organization?
Excel is a great tool. And even on startups, you will typically find Excel or a Google Sheets, something like that. You can still run very powerful analytics in those tools. And in fact, when I first started my journey in people analytics, I was working solely in Excel. I did not know Power Query, which would have made my life a lot easier at the time had I learned that. But I could still run really great dashboards. I could only do about 1 to 2 years look back. So if they wanted, turnover trends for the last 10 years, that would be a lot more challenging based on, the size of your data set because Excel has limitations. But you can push into Excel and find the analytics you need. If you just take, it's a little bit more cumbersome, time consuming to do that. Or any tools that you have already implemented at your company for your HR tech stack, look at their analytics. There's got to be, even if you're using a CRM like Salesforce, or maybe even you're tracking your applicants in a Google Sheet, like you could still find analytics in those tools and start a foundation. You don't have to have the fancy Power BIs or Tableaus or anything like that to start your people analytics.
And I think that that's such great advice. Leveraging the data that would already be available through platforms that the business might be using. There's so many CRM platforms that many organizations use. There's Salesforce, there is HubSpot, you name it, and many of them have, to your point, these different kinds of dashboards that are available. Which you're right. I think that's really great advice. Maybe startups could leverage some existing tools that already have such kind of a functionality. Um, has AI changed anything on the people analytics front? I'm sure it has, but I would love to learn from your perspective as an expert in that field.
Uh, yeah, I would say in a way, and I laugh when folks ask me that because, they're like, "Aren't you afraid ChatGPT is going to take your job?" And I'm like, "No, because most of the time I'm teaching ChatGPT back the things I need to learn." So it's changed in a way. I really use AI as sort of like a thought partner. So, like, let's say I'm stuck on a problem and I'm trying to write a query or I'm trying to relate tables or I'm trying to do something and I'm headed in the right direction, but I'm like, okay, this isn't working. So, like, there's some logic I'm missing, or I'm not thinking about it in a different way. And so I put that information into AI, of course, redacting anything that's company related, key point there. And I really work with it, say, okay, hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what I've done. This is what I'm looking at. Throw me a query. So it might throw me a query doesn't work, and I can find errors in the AI's query. I'm like, okay, this is closer, but I found this error in yours. And so we like it's a like it's a person, uh, me and the chatbot go back and forth, and eventually either it will clue me off and I will figure out the problem on my own, or it may provide me a query. So I really use it as a support tool. In no way has it been able to take my job or anything like that. So if you use it as a tool and not as a replacement, I think it's awesome.
A fair point. Uh, in many conversations with industry folks and both in HR and in the business, um, they won't say it directly, but you realize that many organizations, just for the desperation of having AI implemented throughout their systems, they will plug these AI solutions, which quite often do not carry or have the right kind of context for that organization when AI is processing that data. The other situation or problem I've observed is organizations provide these AI toolkits to their teams, but the teams aren't trained enough to extract the right kind of value from these AI tools. Um, or all they feel is, the AI tools for the most part is going to make my emails sound better. If I have to give a presentation, it's going to make the presentation more articulate. And then for the most part, that's the extent of what a lot of people unfortunately just use AI for. However, I think to your point also, without a domain expert like yourself, which helps train the AI, it's still maybe a few months, if not a couple of years away from AI being fully functional to the extent where it could be independently be reliable. And while it's being reliable, right, there comes the aspect of data safety, security. There's this perspective about ethical AI. Many times, somebody might put an Excel file into an AI platform without knowing or understanding or expecting that the AI might have some kind of a bias the way it got trained so far. And I feel for that purposes, experts like yourself will continually be needed to keep AI valuable for organizations and the industry. Um, any thoughts on that? Any reactions?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I've seen some I don't want to say issues per se, but some concerns with AI and the way that some folks are using it as an adjacent tool to their companies. Now, some companies do have private instances of like Copilot and ChatGPT that do integrate into their core company systems. And other times, and I've used it too. I've had ChatGPT as a side support that isn't integrated in my company, and it is imperative that you remove any data that can tie back to you, your company, employees at your company. So even if I wanted help on, a query and that query might have like my database information in it, or any like employee names, employee ID numbers, birth dates, anything like that. Anonymize it. Put fake names, put a fake database, because you don't know who can be looking at that on the back end. Um, on the flip side, I've also been part of AI implementations that were not supposed to crawl our company site, or a company at all. And during a test phase, I always recommend that our testers in systems implementations challenge that system. Go outside the test scripts. There's probably going to be like implementation consultants that are like, what is she doing? But go outside the test scripts. Okay, let's see if you can find, search for Lizzie's file here. Be like, let me see, can I find TK's file? Can I find this person's file? And we found failures in AI where I could enter into somebody's OneDrive that I wasn't supposed to be able to touch because it was crawling the web and it hadn't, those guardrails hadn't been put in place. So while I think AI is a great tool, I do think folks are maybe a little too trusting with those tools. And I think that they may rely on them a little too much. So I've also seen instances where folks will say, "Oh, I need help with this. Here's my Excel sheet. Do it." No, don't do that. And so I always try to coach folks, "Hey, tell it what you want. Be descriptive. Don't just tell it to do it for you because you're going to rely on it. It's going to spit out something for you and it could be wrong. So don't just rely on it either. You have to walk through, you have to coach it, etc. Use it as a tool, not as a replacement."
Going back to where we met for the first time, right? We were at the HRCI's office, and it was us, um, all of us who had HR certifications. Many of us, including yourself, I guess, has more than one certification, if not a few. Um, why and how do you think certifications, or why are certifications so important for the HR community in general? And um, anything, and why should anybody have certifications in HR?
That's a really good question. I get that a lot, actually. Certifications to me, especially going through my certification cycles, it helps you see other parts of HR that you may not be exposed to. For instance, I have worked at unionized companies, but I was not part of the core HR team that would handle those negotiations. But it's really important to understand how those work and why those are important for companies. Um, Also, with the current administration and everything that's been going on with the EEO and things like that, you learn that during your certification cycles. I may not be affected by some of those in my HR role, but it's good to understand the full breadth of the world of HR and how it's interweaving because your company is going to get affected in some form. So, although I may not work with unions, I may not work with hiring initiatives or other things of that nature, eventually it's going to trickle down into my work somehow. I may have to report on it. I may have to go out and do like market research on it, anything like that. So it's important to have a little bit of everything. What do they say? A jack of all trades, maybe a master of
Master
none.
of
Yeah, exactly. It's so good for that, and I had learned so much, and just, like, a little bit of compensation, a little bit of benefits, a little bit of, risk assessment in your companies, and then also how to align yourself as a strategic business partner is a huge topic in a certification, cycle and studying. So that was also a key term, right? Because typically, you start in HR, you're like, "Okay, it's an administrative role. I'm going to be helping some employees. I'm going to be doing some recruiting." Um, but going through those certifications, I was like, oh, wait, I need a seat at the table too. How can I make my role more important for this company? And I also like that you have to do your recertification cycle. So you're constantly learning, constantly being challenged to stay on top of things, and continue to learn. So um, I do that's my pitch for certifications, especially now being as an analyst. I would never be exposed to a lot of the things that come up as topics and certifications unless I took those.
Makes sense. One of my motivations to start this podcast was specifically to tell the world that how serious HR is about making HR better, and to you are among those HR professionals that that to me and for I believe for everybody else is so inspiring, right? You take your job, your career, your role so seriously. You go beyond um, the guardrails of just what the job definition is. Wanting to uh, learn what makes or what will make your role more value adding to your organization. And through this podcast, I just want to remind everybody that, especially because what happens is, right, and I'm sure you might have heard this. I've heard it so many times, right? Many leaders say that, oh, anybody can do an HR job, or anybody can just start or pivot into doing an HR specific role. My answer to that is yes, anybody can do HR, but not everybody can do good HR. For someone to do real good HR, they have to be as invested, as passionate into their profession like you are, and the way you explained that you're learning these XYZ things that may not be directly involved in your day to day, but you are learning those to make your day to day as value adding to the businesses. And thank you for reminding all of us about staying on top of things, learning the importance of that, recertifications. A lot of times people find it difficult to pivot in their careers. Individuals feel that, oh, if I have an undergrad or a grad degree in a certain field of education, I'm stuck to, or I'm tied to the line of a career that's associated with that degree. Or someone starts off their career with into a certain specific profession, and they often realize that their happiness is somewhere else, or they could be much better at doing something else, or something else outside of their day to day gives them more enjoyment. Have you had any such moments in your career where you did a career pivot? And if yes, what was your thought process going into that?
Yes, I have had to do those career pivots. And I remember finishing grad school. I had my master's degree at this point, and I wanted to get into HR. And I am an introvert. And so I have a hard time like reaching out, connecting, talking to people. But at the time, while I was finishing my graduate degree, I really challenged myself. I was connecting with people on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm, going to graduate. I want to get into this. I was doing internships online, like virtual internships, things of that nature. And one of my managers a long time ago said, you never know who's going to be your boss in the future. So just be kind to everybody and always like have that perspective with the folks you work with or interact with. So I bring that to the forefront because I had worked with someone while I was finishing grad school. I was working in a retail store, and I did manage to get my foot in the door to HR through a friend of a friend who I had networked with who knew of a company that was hiring. So there was a network there. I had said I would never do talent acquisition because I was in sales before. I don't want to do talent acquisition. And so my first job in HR was in talent acquisition. And I did that for about 7 years, and then I came at that crossroads that you're asking about. I was like, it is so exhausting. I want to do broad HR. I want to do something more with my career. And somebody I had worked with in the past that I had mentioned while I was in grad school called me up and said, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to do a systems implementation. Do you have any experience?" And I said, "No." And he's like, "You could do it." Because he saw the work ethic that I brought at that time and my curiosity and my not just desire to learn, but my absolute ambition to learn. Like I a determination, really. It's like I will learn it. Put me on the job, I'll learn it. And I ended up working for that person. Had I had known that 7 years ago, that our interactions and my ethic then would have led to a career pivot when I was ready to do it, I would never have believed anyone if someone had told me that was going to happen. So when it comes to, you never know when you're going to want to make that career pivot or that jump or whatever it is. Interact with people appropriately and in the best way possible, wherever you are, is my best recommendation. Now, if you come to those crossroads and you're not sure where to reach out, um, also be kind to people in those moments too. I've had folks on LinkedIn, hey, I noticed you were a recruiter and now you're a people analyst. How did that happen? hey, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you. Like maybe I know somebody who could help you down the road. So reach out, be kind, um, and network, and you can make those things happen.
Makes sense. No, I can personally speak to your kindness and the skill that you have, right? We in the volunteering projects that we worked at, right? We have so many passionate minds at the table, having different perspectives, and you've been a table leader so many times, and the way you balance out, uh, or you cut the noise, make everybody calm enough to be able to extract the essence from the emotions. Uh, you know, uh, One other beautiful thing that you kind of highlighted was the importance of having someone that you can consider a mentor in your career. For someone that's new in their career and hasn't had the opportunity to identify somebody as a mentor or build that relationship, because it's not just about identifying, it's a handshake. Any advice on how to start creating those avenues for to build a mentor mentee relationship?
That's a really good question, especially if you don't have anyone in your line of sight at your company, right? Because that's the easiest. Is your manager a mentor to you, maybe a colleague or an adjacent, business partner? Those are the easiest to identify, I think. Um, I have personally done the same thing. I've reached out to folks on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, like you're really inspiring. Can I talk to you?" Do I always get a response? No. I have tweeted people. I've tweeted CEOs of companies like, "Hey, I would love to have a chat. Like, this is so interesting. Would you have a chat with me?" And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. But I think it's really challenging yourself to just make those connections and reach out. And like I mentioned, I'm an introvert. I'm totally terrified talking to people I don't know and like, setting up those calls and whatnot. But I have gotten really great relationships out of that. Like I've known HR people at other companies that hey, just tapped on LinkedIn. I would love to have a coffee with you. Can you tell me about your career? I'd love to make that connection. And we just go from there. And that can be scary for some folks. And now if you don't want to do like the in-person networking, which I completely understand, there's podcasts like we are now. I would follow certain people, read different books that I felt were very inspiring to my career, and go from there. And at that next job, maybe you'll find a mentor. I've not had a mentor at every position I've been in, um, but you continue to learn in any capacity, lifelong learner. And I think you'd continue on your career even if you didn't have a mentor.
That's such valuable advice. Thank you. Literally, just this morning, I sent a LinkedIn text to randomly to a leader that I'd worked with a few years back. And for the first few seconds, luckily for me, I'm an extrovert. I have no shame in talking to strangers. But I totally understand. It may be construed very differently by different people. Also, regardless of you being an introvert or an extrovert, I got reminded of this person. I looked him up on LinkedIn, opened his profile, and started typing the message. I was like, "What should I say?"
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I should say what I felt. So I just told him that,
Yeah.
hey, I thought of you and just thought of saying hello. And that's pretty much it. The thought process was that I knew that my intention behind reaching out to him was positive. Long as I knew that, I didn't have any hesitation in just sending them a ping. Am I going to get any value add from that ping? Maybe not. Probably never. And that's not my intention. But it, to your point, it always keeps those connections warm. It could to collectively benefit people, not just the two people that are interacting, but what if I have somebody that needs an opportunity and this leader can help?
Mhm.
That connection would kind of be helpful. And going back to the value of mentorship, and I agree with you absolutely. Any funny incident from your career that you would be able to, you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. I can share something that I did that I thought was funny, and everyone like would make fun of me for it afterwards. But you get really confident in your job, right? So I was tasked with updating some fields on our ATS, and it was a location field. So in the ATS that we used at this particular company, um, I had to change like a certain location module. And I was like, okay, like I'll change the location module and then I'll write in some logic to like update everything that was this location to this new location. And so I'm like going, and I'm like multitasking because at this point I'm like, I'm untouchable. Of course I could do this. I own the system, right? So I'm multitasking, doing it. I'm like, okay, it's done. It's off my radar. Log the system change as I'm in a meeting. And an hour later, a recruiter reaches out to me, and we had probably like 250 jobs posted. And they go, why are all of our jobs in India? And I was like, oh no. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, every single job is posted in India. Everything moved. Why it happened? I had not, I just, something was wrong in the coding logic that I did. I did not. And I was so embarrassed. Even the CEO was like, what happened? Why is everything posted in this? Everything's in India. I was mortified, TK. I was like so embarrassed. And my manager was laughing. And he was like, this is why you need to slow down. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I will fix it. So it took
Oh,
about 3 hours to fix. We had to shut down the entire ATS. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
that's
And then
funny.
we got everything posted. And I mean, we were in like 25 different countries. So I messed up big time.
Wow.
Um, but one, slow down. You will never master your job. Slow down. Validate it. And I was so lucky to be in an organization and under leadership that just had a good laugh at it. And they were like, just fix it. It's fine. Any applications that come in from India for like Great Britain or the US or Canada or whatever, just put them on an India role that's similar. Like we'll figure it out. We're good. But yeah, I will always remember that. And I always like double check anything system related now.
Makes sense. That's funny. And it's only fair for me to share my personal incident. Um, this was early in my career, and I used to work for a professional services company that used to require consulting members to fill timesheets.
Hmm.
And wherever timesheets were missed, we I was expected to reach out to the managers of those team members, and the tonality of my emails to the managers was borderline strict, was pretty direct to that extent. And but most of the managers that I sent those emails to, I knew them, so they knew
Hmm.
me. So there was that context. Um, this was, I think, probably my second time in my life using mail merge,
Okay.
and I did a mail merge. I ended up sending. I was only supposed to send that email to to my business unit, maybe about 500 managers or so. I ended up sending that email to 14,000 to all managers in a 14,000 people company because I just took that Excel file, added that to the mail merge, and then but that was not the end of the mess. I also ended up sending emails to the CEO and the COO, telling them to tell their consultants to fill timesheets. Uh, and by that time, emails were gone. And this was not the time that Outlook had the functionalities about recalling emails. But even if I could, it was too delayed.
Yeah.
This was way before Office 365 and all of that. I was petrified. I thought I was going to lose my job, and I didn't know what to do. I was desperately texting my manager, who's probably the best manager I've had in my life. But for some reason, she wasn't available. And for an hour, I went to the cafeteria. I just wanted to be not seen because I knew the moment I go to my desk, I'll basically have to hand over my resignation. That was me, very new in my career. And then my boss called back and then she's like, hey, what happened? I'm like, I need to talk to you urgently. I made a big mess. And I think you should fire me. And she's like, hold on. Let me get back to my desk and then we can talk. So she came down and then I met her and she asked me what happened. I said that, I was using mail merge. I ended up sending these reminders to the entire company. And then I ended up sending reminders to the CEO, and CEO, I think I should get fired for this. And she started laughing out loud. She's like, uh, going back to one thing that you also highlighted, right? No one can ever be perfect in their jobs. It's always about learning. And sometimes we have to learn to not be too hard on ourselves. One thing that
Yes.
she told me was that only busy people make mistakes. So in that context, she was trying to tell me that because I was doing so many things, and so with in your example also, you're multitasking. And she
Hmm.
said that because you are already doing so many things, this thing happened. One, so don't worry about it because it's not a question mark on your credibility or anything else. Second, she said that what went to people wasn't something that wasn't intended to go. They might have gotten two emails versus
Hmm.
one from their own HR and then from you. Third is the if the CEO and the CEO are getting emails, and I didn't know the CEO or the CEO of a 14,000 people company personally, but she knew them because she had been there for 20 years or so. But she said that you'll be surprised. Two things will happen. One, they'll ignore that email altogether. Second, I think even they should get the message that every other manager is getting. And end of topic. An hour later, I get a response back. I never got a response from the CEO, but I got a response from the CEO saying, "Hey, thank you, Tushar, for sending this reminder. Let me shoot out a note to them." And I was so surprised, but so relieved. But those couple of hours for me were probably the worst hours in my career, and I laugh about it now. But to your point, there's always some learning from some of these things. You also talked about work ethic. I think our individual values matter a lot in what we do, how we interact, how we come off, how we respect other people. And as long as we do it sincerely and continually, I think people around us also realize that sometimes mistakes do happen and the intention was something different.
Hmm.
And thanks for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Any advice for people that are still, let's say, in high school or maybe college that want to pursue a career in HR? What should be the next steps that they should be planning for themselves in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would definitely start either looking at entry level roles or internships. I wish I had started that earlier in my graduate career, and I knew I wanted to go into HR as well. Um, Start with that and start networking. Many colleges have an HR department. Ask to sit in, see if they have any roles posted for students, is another great start. I worked at the cafeteria when I was in college. I wish I would have worked at like in one of the HR roles, and really gotten my foot in the door that way. Don't be afraid to go to networking events. There's a lot of HR conferences that are local, or if you want to go to like one of the bigger conferences, you can look at doing that. And not necessarily for the content. Sometimes the content at those conferences may not be directly HR focused, but for the networking. I have sat, at conferences with chief people officers, and you sit and you have like a meal with them and you just hold your own. And I say always challenge yourself in a conversation. And I have been in conversations with really amazing HR leaders at like conferences or whatever. And don't be afraid to say, like, hey, I am not familiar with that. Can you tell me a little bit more? Like, how does a legal entity work? I have asked that question when I was newer in my career. They were talking about like opening different entities and moving into all these countries. Hey, I'm new in my career. I don't understand a legal entity. Do you mind like telling me about it? Don't be afraid. And I think a lot of folks in that college trying to get their foot in the door, they don't want to be seen as lesser than or that they're not intelligent enough or experienced enough to sit at that table and have that conversation. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know something. It's okay. You're going to learn. And I think I have my background's in psychology, and something I learned in that time uh, was in order to build relationships, people actually like uh, helping others. or teaching them something. So when you can go to somebody and say, "Hey, I don't understand. Can you help me? Do you mind?" Even if it's a conversation, it actually helps build rapport and that relationship equity that you're trying to gain with folks. So it actually helps you more than it hurts you. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer. There's a lot of things I would recommend to folks in college to get into HR, but don't be afraid to ask and admit like, hey, I don't know. Get your foot in the door in an internship and go to a conference. I think you find really good people.
One other goal behind me doing this podcast is exploring and bringing out ideas and perspectives that would mutually benefit um, business functions and enterprise functions, enabling functions like HR. And stakeholder relationship and stakeholder management is a key piece in making the relationship between business leaders and enterprise leaders, or business leaders and leaders of enabling functions, work more effectively. Um, I have two very specific questions. um, what would be that one piece of advice that you would have for HR professionals to build and have solid and trusted relationships with their business stakeholders?
Oh, that's you got some really good questions, TK. Um, Treat them like people. I have been in organizations, and when you're new and you're kind of watching and observing, where there's definitely a line in the sand, if that makes sense. There's a hierarchy there. And, you refer to them in a certain way, like, oh, you can't cross this line or you can't do this, etc. That's still a human being on the other side. Just treat them as such. I don't mind asking the CEO or anything, hey, I heard you went golfing last weekend. How was it? And in a casual way, they are people. And I have built better relationships treating everyone around me like another human being. Titles, don't be scared of a title or anything. And if you're in an organization where that is an issue, that's a whole different conversation. But like I said, I've entered into those organizations, um, came in with a different perspective, came in with that like, hey, you're just a person like I am. Let's chit chat and like figure this out together. And I'm not gonna like have this certain facade about me to get through this job. And I've gotten really great feedback and changed some of those organizations just from like a personality perspective. So build rapport with them as just like a human being. Take off, of course, there's professionalism, but let it down. You're a person. Let your personality shine. Build that rapport. It doesn't always have to be about work. Work appropriate, yes. It doesn't always have to be about work. Like if you put your puppy up on a camera, we're talking about your puppy for like 10 minutes, and that's okay, you know?
My other question is a parallel to that. Oftentimes, business leaders are unconstrained thinkers. They're ones that want to bring in these cutting edge ideas to HR and other supporting functions. And because they are unconstrained thinkers, on the other end, HR is continually trained to keep the organization safe, to keep the leadership safe, to keep the people safe, and work within the boundaries of compliance. From that context, what happens is a lot of times when a leader comes up with a mind blowing idea, and they feel that there is less or no reciprocation from HR or lack of excitement from HR about that same idea, what would be your advice to leaders to build strong relationships with their HR team members that they work with in organizations?
And you also mentioned once with unconstrained thinking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've had a lot of leaders with that, and they have these amazing ideas and they want to run. And yes, you're right. Us as HR folks, that I feel like sometimes we've been seen as like a cinder block wall, right? Like I want to do this, and we're like, hey, can't really do that. Here's some ideas. Um, Use that person and just like AI, use that person as a tool, a sounding board. Here's my great ideas. Know that they are going to keep you in the right lane, right? To protect you, to protect the company. And I would always tell leaders that too, because I have gotten direct feedback from them like, hey, you're just like the fun police, basically. Like, you don't want me to do anything. Like, I just feel like anything I tell you, it's a big no. hey, why do you feel that way? Here's some ideas I have for you. You and I want to work together. What's your end goal? Right? Let's get to the same end goal, and I will tell you how to get there with minimal risk of litigation, with minimal disruption to the business lines. And part of our job too is to help those leaders understand that those ideas don't always just affect their team. So, as that partner in the business, hey, that's an awesome idea. I would love to see that update too, but also it's going to affect IT, it's going to affect product, it's going to affect our customer experience teams. So we need to talk to them too. Like you have to build, you almost become like a project manager in that sense, right? Like, okay, let's think about how this is really going to affect everyone. Is it still worth it? Can we get to the end goal in a different way? And if a business leader can come to the meetings or the table with that same understanding that I'm not here to stop you, I'm here to help you, and we're here to work together, I think they would have a much better experience with their business partners.
Makes sense. Thank you. I absolutely didn't realize we are at time and the conversation just went so smoothly and time flew by. Lizzie, thank you so much for taking time today and sharing such valuable insights. I would request you that, we continue to have these conversations because there's so much that you can share that would be so valuable to people in the industry, folks that want to build a very successful career in HR. With this, thank you once again for being on Simply Awesome People podcast, Lizzie. Thank you so much and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome.